Good morning, everyone. I'm Kate Twitty. I'm the Pro Marketing Coordinator here at ZYTO, and today I'll be hosting our webinar. Super excited to have you all join us this morning. Today we'll be joined by Dr. Vaughn Cook, who will be speaking about a vectored approach to better immunity. A little bit of information about Vaughn. Vaughn R. Cook is the founder and chairman of ZYTO. He's an Oriental medical doctor. He's a licensed acupuncturist, and Vaughn has over 35 years of experience in the complementary and alternative health field. Vaughn specializes in developing technology that integrates Eastern and Western medicine. Without further ado, here's Dr. Vaughn Cook.
Good morning. Welcome to the webinar, A Vectored Approach to Better Immunity. We're going to introduce the wellness triad. It's probably something you're already familiar with, but that's what we're going to be talking about in greater detail. And there's me. That's a fairly current picture, so I should look like that. Today's immune challenges are shown on this slide, and it includes things like pollution, EMF. You look in the lower left-hand corner there, you see that emotions are actually an immune challenge. We've got viruses, bacteria, molds, fungus, lifestyle choices there in the middle, social gaming and social networking, bad eating habits. All of those things can cause our immune systems to be compromised. And then we've got pesticides, we've got the additives in foods, and in the lower right-hand corner, heavy metals. All of those things will have an impact, and none of us can get by without exposure to these on pretty much a daily basis. And I would say not pretty much, on a daily basis. When we approach those as practitioners, when we approach those immune challenges, sometimes we're like the blind guys who approach the elephant, and the guy at the front there takes hold of his tusk and he says, oh, an elephant's a spear. And the other guy grabs his trunk and says, oh, the elephant's a snake. And the leaf and a wall and a tree trunk. And the guy in the back says, no, elephants are a rope. All of those blind guys have part of the information, and they've drawn some reasonable conclusions, but they don't have enough information to really know what an elephant is. The process of gathering more information so that you actually know where you are and what you're dealing with, in aviation, it's called vectoring. And you can see that these planes are vectoring off of each other. They're vectoring off of the antennas that are on the ground, the satellites in the air. And a vector has two characteristics. It has distance and direction. And so by telemetry, these airplanes can know where they are, how fast they're going, what their altitude is, all kinds of information. If the blind guys with the elephant had a little bit more exposure, maybe they needed to go around and feel the whole animal before they drew a conclusion. And that's what we hope to do as practitioners, is gather enough information that we actually get the whole picture. I used to have a clinic up in Salt Lake City, and there were just a number of times when people would come into me and they would say, I don't know where else to go. You're the last guy, I'm broke, so I'm here. That's kind of what they would tell me. And they would then relate how they had gone to, this doctor who specializes in one thing and this doctor that specializes in something else. And they would say, they all helped, but they helped for a while, and then the help went away. In other words, I didn't get the relief anymore. And when we would do the workup that we did, which included bioenergetic testing, we would gather enough information that we could then draw a conclusion as to what the real source of the problem was, or what the sources were, and we could then either treat them concurrently or we could treat them appropriately. And within a matter of weeks, these patients would be better, not because we were doing anything better than anybody else. We were just doing more than anybody else was, because we had more a picture. We saw more of the elephant. So the triad helps us do that. You can see that we've got energetic on the bottom, emotional on the one side, and functional on the other side. Those are the three aspects of wellness. And by addressing all three of those, you're going to get further down the road with your clients or with your patients than if you just tackle it from one area or another. And all of these areas are vectored together. So let's jump into the energetic side of this. Let's start there, because I believe that's where it all starts. This slide shows the yang and the yin. You'll recognize the symbol there in the middle. And that symbol is an ancient Taoist symbol. It basically just is a representation of a concept of opposition, that everything in the universe can be divided into two categories. And everything in the universe is really in both categories, but predominantly in one or the other. So yang is a male characteristic, yin is a female. Yang is up, yin is down. Yang is external, yin is internal. Yang is active, yin is sedentary. Yang is hot, and yin is cold. So you can see it's just the opposites. And if you take the constituents of your anatomy, so you put your body on this line at the bottom, the energy in your body, which is called qi, is the most yang component of your body, or of your anatomy. And then the next most yang thing is blood. And then moving towards the inside, you get into other body fluids, and then finally you get into tissue. That's the reason why you can do an energetic assessment and predict where health is moving, because you're actually at the beginning of the continuum. You're at the most active part of that continuum. This slide is an acupuncture doll, and you can see the lines on her body. Those are acupuncture meridians, and on those meridians are located points called acupuncture points. This is a close-up of one of those meridians. This is the stomach meridian, and it starts with the yellow arrow there just below her eye, and it runs around her jaw and upper head, but then it drops down onto her neck, across her breast, down the front of the abdomen, and it terminates on the second toe there where the pink arrow is. I put an arrow in there that would match her toenail polish, just in case you're wondering. Here's another one. This is just a close-up of the meridians and the points that are on the head. And there are also a lot of points on the ear. You can actually treat the entire body by needling or stimulating these points on the ear. It's called a somatotopy. The next slide is a horary clock, and in all of these meridians, there is qi all of the time. There's always energy flowing through the meridians. But there is a tidal wave of energy that moves through the body in a 24-hour circadian rhythm. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, that tidal wave of qi moves from the liver meridian into the lung meridian. So that's considered kind of the starting point of the day. And it moves through the lung meridian in a 2-hour period, and then it goes into the large intestine meridian, and so on around. The reason that it takes 2 hours to get through a meridian is because you have 12 meridians, 12 primary meridians. You've got a couple besides that. But in that period of time, in that 24-hour period of time, the qi will move through the entire body. And this is significant diagnostically, because sometimes you'll get a client or a patient who comes in and they say, I wake up every morning at 3 o'clock, just like clockwork. Well, you look at the horary clock and you say, okay, what's happening? Well, this tidal wave of energy is moving into the lung meridian. It's possible that they have a weak lung meridian, and when that tidal wave of energy hits it, it doesn't know what to do with it, and boom, they wake up. It creates a stimulation enough that they wake up. Or you look at the opposite side of that 3 o'clock position, and it's 3 o'clock p.m. Well, that means that this tidal wave of energy is furthest away from the urinary bladder meridian at that same time. And it may be that they have a problem with urinary bladder. And when the energy is furthest away from it, the urinary bladder meridian is saying, hey, send me some energy, send me some energy. And that starvation essentially is creating the stimulation that, boom, wakes them up at 3 o'clock. So the horary clock is a diagnostic tool as well as knowing the meridians. Each of these meridians is identified as being part of one of the 5 elements. And this slide shows those 5 elements. You can see the girl on the upper left who is a little bit angry and frustrated. That's the emotion that's associated with the wood element, and the meridians that are associated and the organs are gallbladder and liver. And we won't get into all these arrows on this diagram, but I wanted to use it to illustrate that there are emotions that are tied with each of the meridians and each of these elements. So if somebody comes in and says, I don't know what's the matter with me, but my anger, I can't control it. Well, that's probably a liver problem. Now, I don't say probably a liver problem. Anger is associated with the liver. So if you're going to look at any organ, start with the liver. So that's why this is helpful. This slide then shows you a couple of points on the front and the back. They're called front mu points on the front, and the top ones there relate to the lung. These are actually diagnostic points. They're sometimes called trigger points. Down on her abdomen, just lateral to the umbilica, and on the back, that's the back shu and the front mu point for large intestine. If you have a patient, you can actually push on these points, and if they have a problem with that organ, it'll be an owie kind of point, or it could be a tickle point. Sometimes a tickle is halfway to a hurt, they say. The associated emotion here is grief. I don't know if I have enough time, but I can tell you a story about a woman who was attending a seminar, and she was having an inconsolable grief about the death of her mother, which had happened about a little over a year prior. And she had a dry cough, an unproductive dry cough. It was just a kind of cough like that. And we got into the evox portion of this seminar, and I can't remember how it happened, but anyway, she came up to be the guinea pig, and we talked a little bit, and I said, why don't we do an evox or perception reframe on your mother? And so we did, and it was an emotional experience for her, but it cleared the energy, and she didn't cough. It was a 2-day seminar or a 3-day seminar, and she didn't cough for the whole rest of that seminar. So just by relieving the emotion attached to her mom, which was grief, it was impacting her lung meridian, and that's what was stimulating this unproductive cough. So you do see things like that are kind of textbook and profound. It's kind of fun to see. These are all of the back shu and all of the front mu points. They're not all labeled, but you can see that every organ has a trigger point. And so if someone, let's look at this woman's lung back shu point. Let's say you have someone who comes in and they have a chronic back problem in their upper thorax. It could be that they have a lung problem, and the lung problem is actually causing the back to be weak energetically, and that allows the subluxation to persist. And I threw this slide in. This is a picture of what's called 6 gates. Large intestine 4 on the hand, liver 3, and spleen 6. These are 6 points, because they're bilateral, 6 points that actually you can needle, and it kind of tonifies everything. So they're kind of go-to points that work miracles. What we're looking for when you're looking at the body energetically through the meridian system, it's kind of like you're looking at this hose that carries water. And what happens is sometimes somebody comes along and steps on the hose, and it restricts the flow of the water. And when you put the needle in, or when you stimulate the point, it resets the switch and takes the foot off the hose and allows the energy to flow the way it's supposed to. Remember, energy, the qi that we're dealing with, is the most yang component of the body. And so if you can correct the qi flow, you'll actually impact everything else downstream, and everything else from blood to body fluids to tissue, because it all follows qi. This fellow is a doctor from Germany. His name is Reinhold Vaughn. He died several years ago, but in the mid-last century, he did some experimenting. He and a bunch of his buddies in Germany, a lot of whom were dentists. And you can see that he's got this stylus in his hand, and he's touching it to the toe of this patient. What he's doing is he's measuring the electrical flow at the acupuncture point. And what they learned was the amount of energy available at an acupuncture point is diagnostic of what is happening at the hardwired organ associated with that point. So I don't know what point he's on there. It looks like it's about the gallbladder point maybe. So he might be measuring a gallbladder meridian. Well, one of the things these guys found, excuse me, is that teeth have a significant impact on the rest of the body. They refer to teeth as odontons. And an odonton is the tooth and the surrounding tissue. What they found was, in fact, what they did is they mapped all this. And they found that each of those teeth has a specific relationship to a meridian, an organ, to an endocrine gland. In fact, here is another slide that shows you a little bit closer picture of the teeth as it relates to the endocrine system. So if you have an anterior pituitary problem, you might have a problem with your third molar on the top, on either side. Thyroid is going to be your first molar on either side on the top. Now, we'll talk about that here. I think we got a slide. Yep, this is the slide. So the question then is, what is the chicken and what's the egg? Because we've got everything on this energy pathway that's related. And let's say that this patient presents, this client or patient comes into your clinic, and it's the woman on the left who we're seeing the sinuses of. And she comes in and she's complaining of a chronic bacterial infection in her ethmoid sinuses. Now, I've never had a patient who've come in and said that's what the problem is, but they've just said, I've always got a chronically stuffy nose. And when this happens, and you know, it's something I've had for years, but I just kind of learned to live with it until last week. I fell down and hurt my low back, and all of a sudden my sinuses are just driving me crazy. And what can happen then is, if this is not taken care of, you can actually find that the tooth, and this would be tooth 31, that's one of the teeth that's associated with this sinus and that part of the low back, it abscesses. So now she goes in and she has a root canal, and she's got this chronic low back problem, and her sinuses are stuffed. And, you know, that's the cool part about doing biocommunication kinds of testing, is it allows you to gather a lot of data, and you can start putting these pieces together if you know what pieces match. Because a lot of people would say, what do my sinuses have to do with my low back and the root canal I just got? So, but that's a good segue into the emotional side. So let's talk about the emotions. This is kind of how an emotion is created. It starts out with information, which then is filtered through a belief system, creates a perception, which then creates an energetic response. The energetic response will then inform amino acids to organize themselves into what are called peptides, and specific amino acids in specific formations will create a certain emotion. So fear has a peptide that goes with it, probably more than one. Anger has another one. It's a different one. And the reason why in Chinese medicine you can say, well, anger is associated with the liver, it's because that peptide structure has an affinity to the liver. And fear has an affinity to the urinary bladder and the kidney. The peptide does. And so the emotion is associated for legitimate reasons. So let's start with information. Information is what is conveyed by an arrangement of things. This slide shows a bunch of things, and in this arrangement, there really isn't a lot of information. But if we take those same things and reorganize them or rearrange them, it now conveys more information. And we go, oh, this is a couple of guys. I wonder what they're looking at. To answer that question, all we have to do is rearrange the things, and it gives us different information. So what is conveyed by an arrangement of things is what information is. It turns out that everything in the universe is an arrangement of things. So the diet, you know, if you're eating good food, that's one arrangement of things. If you're eating crappy food, that's a different arrangement of things. Heavy metals, pollution, all of those things are an arrangement of things, and therefore they convey, or they bring with them, the conveyance of information, or a conveyance, which would be their own information. So that information from a conscious level, and I think even from a subconscious level, and we don't have time to go into that in this webinar, but it goes through this perception engine. And the way perception works is you take the information in and it runs through a filter of your beliefs. And that, what comes out the other side, is your perception. You know, we're all blind to some degree, and we all approach the elephant, and it depends on what part we attach to, and then we say, oh, I believe that an elephant is a rope, because that's the piece that I attach to. Well, the reason why we filter information through our beliefs is because in order to reconcile our existence, we have to justify it. And the way I justify my existence is to create my universe in a way that is congruent with my belief system. And so everything I see, I then run through this filter and it comes out the other side and it makes sense to me because it's congruous with my belief system. Now, somebody else who has a different belief system will have a different conclusion. If you don't believe me, just go ask your husband or wife, you know, the old he said, she said thing. That's how that works. And it's not like my perception is faulty or your perception is faulty. It's just different because we're filtering it through different beliefs. Well, that brings up the question of how do we improve on that? And the way you improve on it is not to worry about are my beliefs right or wrong. You have to ask the question, are they informed or are they uninformed? In this slide, you can see the picture of the old woman and the young woman. And you may not know, you know, when you look at that, you might see one or the other. The old woman, you can see the choker around her neck and her nose there. She's wearing a shawl, and this is her, you know, her eye. And if you look at it and say, well, I can see the old woman, but I don't see the young woman. Well, if you don't see the young woman, she doesn't exist, at least not to you. If you can see her, she does exist. That's the beautiful thing about perception is your reality is created by your perception, and your reality only includes the things that you actually perceive. So then if I say to you, oh, well, let me show you the young woman. Here's her ear and here's her jawline, and she's looking away from us, looking to the right. And this, the old woman's mouth is the choker around the neck on the young woman. All of a sudden you go, oh yeah, okay, now I can see her. So see, you're now more informed, and so you have a more complete picture of actually what you're looking at. Here's another one that's kind of fun. This one, if I ask you the question, what is the relationship between the blue and the red line to the black line? The obvious conclusion is, well, it's right in the middle of the two of them. And then when we move to the next slide and or when we slide that bar away, you can see that that black line is actually a continuation of the red line. So what we see isn't always accurate, but you know, depends on how informed or uninformed we are. The next slide then shows us what I call objective reality. It's really a completely informed reality. And I don't think any of us have the luxury of having that. But if you did, you would see everything as it exists in reality. Most of us frame the picture, and so we end up with a partially informed reality. That's why it's called subjective, because it's subjective to my belief system. What we're interested in is expanding that, and because we don't want to go through life with, you know, like these blind guys touching the elephant. We actually want to have more information than that. Now, I have to put a plug in for eVox here. This is where eVox comes in. You can do perception reframing, and the reason why that's important in the immune system is because every disease process has an emotional component. And if you can address the emotional component, it eliminates the possibility that the person will subconsciously self-sabotage. In other words, that they will persist in their disease process or their unwellness because of some emotional attachment. So you do a perception reframe and it expands their perception and it doesn't take away. Sometimes people might say, well, wait a minute, if I do a perception reframe, is that like changing my belief system? The answer is no, it doesn't change any beliefs, it just gives you more beliefs. So beliefs aren't just religion. Sometimes you might think, oh, he's talking about my religious beliefs. Well, that's one of them, but that's actually just a very small amount of what all your beliefs are. You have beliefs about the right food to eat, what colors look good on you, what kind of clothes you want to wear, et cetera, et cetera. Everything in your life you have a belief around. And if we expand that belief, that's what evox does. It doesn't take away any of your beliefs, it just gives you more beliefs. And so with that expanded belief system, you now can filter in a more informed way the information that comes to you. And actually, it's way cool. It's really profound what you can do with evox with clients and patients. Okay, so let's go back now. So now we've got perception, and that's going to create an energetic response. So let's assume that the information that we get is a virus. It doesn't have to be an exposure to the virus, it can actually just be the information of the virus. But it can be the exposure, and one of the reactions might be a perception that, oh my gosh, if I get this virus, I'm going to die. Well, that's going to create a fair amount of fear. You can see fear happening there. And you may say, well, I'm just going to go home and sit in my bedroom and I'm not going to come out till this virus goes away. Okay, that's a strategy that is legitimate based on that perception. But what's going to happen is that perception will create an energetic response. It actually changes your energy pattern, and the energy pattern then organizes those amino acids into peptides, and you end up with a couple of emotions. In this case, it would be fear and pensiveness. You might get a little bit depressed if you were sitting home all the time. Those emotions will then impact different organs, and that brings us to the functional side of this. So we know that fear has to do with urinary bladder. We know that pensiveness has to do, or melancholy has to do with spleen and stomach. Well, the spleen is obviously an immune organ, but so are the rest of them. You have two kinds of immunity. You've got innate and acquired. Innate is what you're born with, and acquired is the good stuff. It's what we learn when we get sick. You get sick and your body says, oh, I'm smart now, I won't get that again. That's called acquired immunity. Innate immunity starts with your skin. Skin's a pretty amazing thing. It keeps all your insides in and it keeps all the bad guys out. And there's an energy called Wei. It's a Wei Qi, W-E-I. And that is the energy that kind of encases your body and is your first line of defense against any kind of exogenous pathogen. In addition to skin, you've got your lungs and your large intestine. Those are paired, by the way. Large intestine is a yang organ and a yang meridian, and lung is a yin meridian. So all of these pairings go with a yang and a yin. You actually have more surface area in your lungs and more surface area in your digestive tract by a long ways, a lot more surface area than you have on your skin. So your most vulnerable exposure to the outside environment is not your skin, just by virtue of the fact that you don't have as much of it as you have, surface area elsewhere. For that reason, it's not surprising that about 50 to 70% of your immune system is focused on your digestive tract. In addition to those two organs, you've got the lymphatic system, which is part of the immune system. And that includes your spleen. You can see the spleen here on this slide. You're made of between 50 and 100 trillion cells. That's a lot of cells. And all of those cells communicate with each other. So the cells themselves are called the parenchyme. And in between the cells is a space that's called the mesenchyme. The mesenchyme is sometimes referred to as terrain. And in the terrain, you have things like capillary beds, you've got lymphatic nodes, so the lymph system runs through there. You've got nerve endings that come into the mesenchyme. The mesenchyme is a critical area for immunity because all the good stuff and all the bad stuff that goes in and out of the cells has to go through the mesenchyme or has to go through this terrain. Now you'll see in the top part of this slide, I've got a T cell and a B cell. Those aren't in your mesenchyme, those are in your bloodstream, but they're also part of your immune system. All of those cells are built to communicate. They have receptors on them, and those receptors are tuned to different pieces of information, different frequencies. And when you get a peptide that comes along, it will transmit its information into the cell. When you get a chemical, you can see this chemical configuration. That arrangement of things has its own energy pattern, and that communicates into the cell. And it causes the cell to do certain things. In the lower left-hand corner of this slide is an illustration that shows coming out of the cell what's called an exosome. An exosome is it's really like a little envelope with a bunch of information in it. And the cell uses that to communicate with other cells. It also uses it to expel excess stuff out of the inside of the cell. The exosome is an immune factor because some of the information that's included in it will upregulate inflammation or downregulate inflammation. It causes more universal things to happen in your body. So that's part of your immune system as well. So we put all of these things together, and we've got a pretty robust immune system. I mean, we're put together pretty well. And there are 50 to 100 trillion cells, and the surprising thing then is, this is the thing that caused an identity crisis for me a few years ago when I learned this, I guess several years ago by now. You actually have 10 times more microbes living in your body with you as you do cells. So if you've got 50 trillion cells, you've got about 500 trillion microbes. I used to think I was the guy who lived here. And then I learned this and I realized, holy smokes, I'm running an apartment complex and I just happen to be the anchor tenant. So the thing that happens with all these buddies that live in your body and on your body is your immune system is designed to keep these things in balance. Immunity is not the elimination of all your co-tenants. It's a happy cohabitation. That's really what immunity is. And so when you get some kind of disruption in the mesenchyme that causes, let's say you take an antibiotic and it kills a ton of the microbiome in your gut. And the vacancy that's created by the microbes that are killed is then filled by an opportunistic organism that lives right beside them that's a yeast. So now you've got too much yeast in your gut and not enough of the other guys that all got killed, and you've got a problem. And the problem isn't that you've got yeast, it's that you've got too much yeast. So your immune system then goes to work and tries to balance that back out, and what you get are a bunch of symptoms. So let's say that this was a virus, and so you caught a cold, and your body said, hey, let's get rid of this virus. Well, how do you do that? Well, you spike a fever. That's one strategy your body uses. Get the temperature up, let's kill a bunch of them. Or let's cough and get rid of this gunk out of our lungs. Or, hey, we can't get it out fast enough, let's create a rash. And blow your nose, let's get this stuff out of your sinuses. So all of these symptoms are just your body's best attempt at dealing with its current condition. So if you look at all of these immune challenges, there's going to be different strategies your body will use to maintain homeostasis, to maintain this balance between everything that's you and everything that's part of you, all your buddies and all of your environmental stuff. And that's why, for example, heavy metals are an issue, is because they disrupt this equilibrium. A lot of times people think, oh, there's just a silver bullet, it doesn't matter what happens to me because All I have to do if I get sick is go to the doctor, they'll give me a shot and I'll be good to go. Well, there is no silver bullet. And yes, a shot might be part of the strategy that will get you better, but you shouldn't count on it. What you should count on is taking a complete look at this entire environment that's you, and dealing with it in a way that will help the body restore the homeostatic balance that it's interested in. It's kind of like you start out life with a pearl. You're in a healthy place to begin with. And over time, by choices and by exposure and by other things that go on, we add layers and layers to that pearl, and so it becomes more like an onion. And the onion then represents what Reckewig. This is a chart that illustrates a thing called homotoxicology. It was developed by a doctor named Reckewig, and he found that people get sick in a predictable way, and they get well in a predictable way. Your sickness happens on that red arrow. It's called progressive vicariation, and your wellness happens on the green arrow going the other direction, called regressive vicariation. And it happens in certain phases, in predictable ways. And again, if you understand this or you watch this, it helps you monitor clients, it helps you monitor patients, and you can inform them better as to what's going on in their lives as they go through a healing process or a quest for better wellness. There's a doctor by the name of Herring, Constantine Herring. He lived in the mid-1800s. He was a homeopathic physician, and he observed that his patients would heal from the top down, from the inside out, and in reverse chronological order. What that means is, if I am sick and I start to get better, I'm going to feel like I'm getting better before I actually do. My brain will kind of clear up before my bunions go away. The inside out means that the most critical organs will heal before the least critical organs. Your body's interested in keeping you alive, and that's a good strategy for that. And you actually, in reverse chronological order, you will actually revisit old symptoms in the reverse order that they were laid down. I've had patients who have started on a therapy program and called me after a couple of days in a panic and said, I just remember this one guy, and he said, I'm having a headache. And I thought, okay, tell me about your headache. I mean, so what? And he said, no, this is the kind of headache I haven't had for like 10 years, and they're really bad. And it scares me to death to even start to get this headache. And I said, you don't need to worry. This is not, it's a good thing, because it means we're back 10 years now. You're healing in reverse chronological order. And we're back to the headache symptom. And what's going to happen is you're going to have a mild headache, and it's going to go away fairly fast, because you migrate back through this stuff a whole lot faster than it took you to get where you were to the sick position. Well, sometimes what happens then, you can see in this slide, you take the pearl, you hike up the mountain, and as you're hiking up, you encounter all of these immune compromising things, and at some point, you reach a pinnacle where your body gives out. The pinnacle of that mountain isn't some other than it's you. When my body is loaded to the point of fatigue or to the point of exhaustion, boom, I'm in trouble. That's when I become a basket case kind of patient. And you start tumbling down the other side of the hill, and if somebody helps me get back up and I move back down the left side of the hill, I'm going to go back through all of those symptoms on the way back down. Now, there's a reason why that happens, but it does happen. So how do we then deal with this with biocommunication? That's the whole concept of the stressors and the balancers. If you look at the stressors and say, okay, what is causing the problem? And then you look at, well, what balances the problem? And that gives you a lot of information, and then you can start putting these pieces together. And you can start looking at it on this continuum. It doesn't mean that I'm going to run a scan with my ZYTO technology and say, oh, you have this disease because that's what showed up on the scan. That's not how it works. How it works is you look at what shows up and those become what? They become targets, essentially. They become, it's like somebody in the room raised their hand and said, hey, what about me? Hey, what about me? And you start looking at all those raised hands and you go, oh, I can see a pattern here. This is a spleen problem or this is a stomach problem. And then you can treat it appropriately. The prophylactic approach to immunity is don't get sick. And the way to not get sick is to keep your immune system in balance. Keep that ecosystem that is you as homeostatic as you can. And the way you do that is to make good choices. So in the upper left, you see the guy bowing. That's gratitude. Be grateful. Gratitude actually has a strong promoting effect on immunity. Get some good sleep, eat good food. Don't be afraid to feel some emotions, a range of emotions. Work on relationships, take the right vitamins. Remember to floss and brush your teeth and exercise, drink water. All of those things are smart things that will help keep you healthier. And when you do get sick, you'll get better faster because you'll be stronger. It's been great to be here. I hope you all have a great, healthy rest of the year and a good next year with lots of health too.
We just want to thank Dr. Cook again for being with us. Vaughn, that was incredible, and I think that has a lot of very useful information for us, especially today as we focus on trying to keep our immune systems healthy. If anyone has any questions, you can email us at marketing@zyto.com. Just wanted to quickly highlight some tools that ZYTO has available to help with immunity. A few months ago, we released our Today's Immunity Biosurvey. This biosurvey scans for more than 280 biomarkers to determine which areas of immunity may need the most support. You can see top responses for your selected product, general, and service virtual items. You can select from more than 600 no-sode virtual items for homeopathic output. You can gain important insights into immunity from the 6 different reports and vectors tab. If you have any more questions, you can learn more at zyto.com/today's-immunity-biosurvey. Also, just wanted to quickly highlight our Today's Basic Immunity Report for our balanced systems. This new report focuses on the 6 foundational areas of immunity: the immune system, the gastrointestinal system, the lymphatic system, the respiratory system, mental and emotional stress, and sleep. With this new report, more than 20 new biomarkers were added. This report is available to all of our balanced customers. And if you have any questions, you can watch the walkthrough video on YouTube at zyto.com/ZYTO technology. Just wanted to quickly highlight a tool that ZYTO has that I think is very crucial in this time of restrictions on business and quarantines. Our ZYTO remote system allows you to assist clients anywhere and really opens up the door to grow your wellness business anywhere in the world. If you have any questions about this, we do have a great infographic. You can find that at zyto.com/marketing-materials. If you want to place an order for the remote hand cradle, you can do that at zyto.com/remote. And if you already have the remote hand cradle and want to go to the app where your clients can download it, go to zyto.com/remote-app. For the month of November, we do have some great specials going on for our ZYTO systems. For our ZYTO Balance system, we're offering 2 months of free subscription. That's $100 in savings. Take advantage of that offer. Go to zyto.com/promo. For our ZYTO Select and Elite systems, we're offering 2 free biosurveys, which is a $1,500 value. Take advantage of this offer. Go to zyto.com/pro-promotion. Thanks again for joining us for our November Wellness webinar. We hope you enjoyed it and also hope that you'll join us next time. You can join us on December 2nd, 2020 at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We look forward to seeing you again.